Utah Politics.
Time now to debate some of the big stories of the week with the Inside Utah Politics panel. This week we have former State Representative Patrice Arent and State Auditor John Dougal. Great to have both of you on the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Great to be here.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
You bet. Let's start off with the bipartisan Senate gun agreement. I want to start off with the process. Senator Murphy out of Connecticut, Chris Murphy out of Connecticut, really kind of taking the lead here. And he was very vocal in saying, look, I'm not getting everything I want, but at least I'm getting some, and that's good. Patrice, let's start with you. Your assessment of how this all came together.
I'm really pleased with how it came together. It's bipartisan. There's some meaningful proposals. I'd like to really thank our Senator Mitt Romney for being involved in the process and bringing compromise. It's not everything I'd want, but I really appreciate the process, and I'm hoping this will lead to further bipartisan agreements.
John, your thoughts on this bipartisan group coming together and hashing this out?
Well, if you want to see something at the congressional level done, I think they went through a good process. Clearly, from my perspective, I don't think this is really a federal issue. I don't think the federal government needs to weigh in. I think states are perfectly capable of addressing gun violence and the various issues that are associated with it.
Dig into that a little more. Why do you think states are better equipped to do that?
Well, even in the agreement, you see indications of this. When it comes to the discussion of red flag laws, they admit readily the federal courts aren't well suited for those, and they're relying on states and state courts to take care of it. But when you start looking through in terms of background checks, age requirements, other things like that, I think the states are perfectly well positioned. You've already seen New York State start to take some action from their perspective that their constituents think are good policy. And I don't think we have to have the federal government or Congress race in every time there's an issue in the nation. It's not a congressional problem.
Patrice, I'd like to get your thoughts on this. Is this something that should be done at a federal level, or do you think the state is better equipped as well?
I think the feds need to come in and do something here. I mean, certainly there are issues that need to be handled on the state level, and we've tried to handle them. But some of it's just not going to happen, and people do cross lines. People buy guns in one state, take them to another state. I think there needs to be some uniformity. I wish we could have more, but you know, I think we will see red flag laws, as John has talked about, done on a state level, and we almost got it done here, but we have not.
Okay, let's move to that now. Let's take a look at some of these proposals that are included. They include funding for school safety and mental health resources, those enhanced review periods for under 21 that you alluded to, John, and then encouraging states to pass red flag laws as well. From an effective standpoint, John, do you see that making a difference in what we're seeing happening across our country?
Well, I think first of all, when it comes to red flag laws, I think for a lot of folks, you admit there are certain circumstances where the courts and public safety needs to step in and take one's guns away, but there should be appropriate due process. And that's where we've had problems in the past when it comes to red flag laws. Some folks want to pass something that doesn't have due process, doesn't allow the other person to express their concerns and opinions when it comes before the court. That's one issue. Clearly, we have some concerns when it comes to how old should you be to own certain types of guns and those type of questions. I think those are suitable for states to discuss and debate what is the appropriate level. But really, one of the concerns I have is too much of what they're talking about at the federal level historically has been let's feel good about certain things, but it doesn't actually address and solve the problems that we're facing.
Yeah, so that's my question to you. Will these address the problem?
At the end of the day, you know, you won't really see. But I clearly have concerns that say, at the federal level, do I want the federal government doling out money to entice states to take certain action that they think is appropriate? No, I don't. I want the states to be highly independent in their choices.
All right, Patrice, we went over some of the main points that this bill will accomplish. Do you see that being effective and making a difference?
Well, some of this is about funding, but it's about funding to enhance our mental health services. It's about funding to help with school safety. I think everyone agrees that those are important things that we do need to handle. And I think it will make a difference. I think this is a great first step. Well, there are a lot of good first steps in this, and I'm pleased that we're making the progress, and I think this will save lives.
Let's talk about how this will be received in Utah. You mentioned, Patrice, that we've come close on these red flag laws, but we also need to point out the person that ran those bills lost in convention this year. So how do you see Utahns holding on to these ideals, and will they be in favor or opposed?
I think most Utahns are going to support these very modest proposals. I think you're going to see Utahns really rallying behind this. This is a compromise bill. It certainly doesn't take an extreme position at all, and I think you're going to despite a lot of Utahns really supporting this.
Your thoughts there, John? Again, mentioning Representative Handy, who ran those bills and then ended up losing in convention this year.
Yeah, I think Utahns are going to be very split on this issue. You know, guns are a major part of people's culture, their life experience. It's a very important issue for them. It's a very passionate issue. I think we all agree when it comes to folks that are criminals, we're concerned about them. But to weigh in and possibly restrict access for law-abiding citizens, that's where Utahns will be especially concerned.
Let's move on to the January 6th hearings. They have been public. We have seen a lot of testimony come out. As of recording, we had seen 2 hearings so far. Patrice, let's start with you on this one. Your assessment from what you've heard. I know it's a lot, but what are some of the main points you're taking from this?
These have been great hearings. I think we've all learned a lot. We've heard from a lot of the people that are in Trump's inner circle, and they all were advising him, with the exception of Giuliani, that he needed to accept the results. Former Attorney General Barr referred to Donald Trump as being detached from reality. So I think that, you know, there's been a lot of good testimony about what happened with Vice President Pence. And I was, you know, he at least wanted to call out law enforcement where our president wasn't willing to even do that to protect our Capitol. But these hearings, I think, have been good. 70% of the public said they wanted to have these hearings. They wanted to learn about what happened because people want accountability and they don't want it to happen again.
John, your thoughts on what you've seen come out of these hearings so far?
Well, so far I'd say they're a waste of time. I mean, have we really even learned anything new that we didn't already know in the last year and a half? You know, I haven't seen a single thing that's really come out that's altered the perception of what took place January 6th or the understanding we have since that point. We also had yesterday, the committee basically said, you know, we're not sure if we're actually going to recommend any kind of criminal charges and refer that to anybody. And so there's kind of this, well, then so what? And I think if you step back and you think about Watergate, a lot of people compare it to Watergate. There you had committees really doing the investigative work before the public. And you saw that take place. This committee is much more kind of what folks would describe as the Benghazi committee. There was a certain agenda they're trying to drive. You've already done certain work. You're not really investigating in this fair, impartial perspective. And we haven't learned anything new.
Patrice, address that. Because that's what I'm hearing a lot from the Republican side is, look, we're not learning anything new. Your thoughts on what we have heard to this point?
This is a bipartisan committee. Let's make sure we understand that. And I think we are highlighting things that maybe the public did not understand. Certainly there have been some things we've heard before, but this is important information. The information about how the president was getting information from his own inner circle, that there was no fraud, and watching how he just made a fortune of all of his fundraising all over this and the 60 lawsuits. I think we've learned. I think we still have a lot more to learn, and I hope there's accountability, and I know that our Department of Justice is watching this very closely. I think from what Congresswoman Cheney said, there haven't been any decisions yet on what kind of referral there might be, and certainly that's not the only source of a possible indictment.
John, your thoughts on another avenue. Should this be going through another, say the Justice Department or somewhere else, to where there could be potential accountability?
Well, the first thing I want to mention, Glenn, is I think Patrice and I both agree this was a horrendous act that took place on January 6th. So let's not leave any doubt about that. Various folks should be prosecuted because of that. There's other concerns that come into place. But for a guy like me who's an auditor, when I hear a committee that says, okay, we haven't finished our investigation, but we're going to start presenting the findings, to me it's kind of, okay, either do it as part of the investigation or complete the investigation and then present your findings. Don't kind of do this thing half-cocked.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about potential outcome. Patrice, do you see anything coming from this of substance?
Well, hopefully there will be something. I mean, for one thing, we hope this never happens again. I think John and I both agree on that. And everything they can learn to make sure that something like this never happens again is really important. There may be some accountability on the part of the president. And you know, we're talking about a president who's talking about running for office again. So if there's something he's done that's illegal, that needs to be addressed. So I think this is a very important, these hearings are important, and I'm glad the public is paying attention. At 20 million viewers on that first night.
All right, John, we have about 30 seconds left. Do you see anything coming of this?
Well, one thing I would hope is Congress fixes the Electoral Count Act. Clearly, that was the vehicle President Trump was trying to drive through. There's a lot of confusion about what's in there. Let's at least fix that.
All right. I wish we could dig into this a little more, but unfortunately, I have been given the wrap. So we are going to have to end it on that note. Really important conversation. I appreciate your insight. Thanks so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more Inside Utah.